I became a commissioner because things were messed up in our fire department, in our fire district. We couldn't even attach to a single fire hydrant. We were still having to haul water by tanker truck, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but when you have fire hydrants in a neighborhood, you can't attach to them. You've got to make changes. With that, we have to make changes that make sense. We have to stand up, or as I call it, the silenced majority. We've been silenced. The reality is that we need good conservative leadership that's willing to stand up, willing to talk to the people, willing to listen to the people, and take those issues back with them. But here's the thing. I don't care what anybody says up here, none of us, including myself, can do it alone. Not only do we need your vote, do I need your vote on June 11th, but I need your support. I need your voice. I need to know that you guys have my back when I go to our house and I fight to keep our freedoms alive, when I fight to keep our conservative values chugging along. Look, we've got a great foundation from our former, or still our representative who's stepping down. We have a tremendous foundation. I want to build on that. I want to grow on that. And I want to ensure that our government doesn't continue to make the changes that we all see is happening right now. I thank each and every one of you for being here. Angie, and everybody else that was involved in putting this together, thank you all so much.
Everybody hear me fine without this microphone? Forward. So first off, I want to thank Ms. Angie and the Greenville County GOP, as well as the library system, for putting on this debate here. It's very important for our district to hear what we all have to say. All good points. I don't think there's any kind of disagreement that we're all conservative in this room. But again, my name is Daniel Rumpfeld. I was born in the area, and like many of you guys, I am a blue-collar worker. I don't have a farm. I don't own a business. I'm just a regular, average Joe guy. And I hear what everybody says, all the issues about the roads. And I've been married for about 11 years now. 3 very rambunctious kids. It's always a task every day, but it's always something special to live with them. But I'm running for this state house because we have too many, politicians and decades-old, conservatives in the state house. We need to progress our conservative ideas a different way, because what we have been doing so far is not working. Not only are we becoming more polarized as a conservative group, we're becoming more as a hated group in the state house. We have them burned bridges with, like it or not, with people in there. Our representatives have been in there for decades, and we have no relationship with the ways and means. We need to build a relationship back and to progress conservative ideas. Now, policies are so white and black in today's world that we need a conservative leader that actually knows how to channel the waters in context. And I hope that's me. I hope you all agree that we need to change our approach for conservative ideas, because what we have now is not working. We have so many bills in the House that is anti-taxpayers right now. Taxes going up. We have uncontrolled development. Multiple bills are gathering dust because the Freedom Caucus has a bad relationship with the Majority Caucus, and we need to rebuild that relationship. Majority of the House Republicans see a different idea, as we are now conservatives as a minority. We need to change that approach. We can't be calling each other socialists on the House floor and expect our views to be promoted in the state. There's moderates in the state house. There's liberals in the state house. We don't have the majority field, and we got to steer the ship, because what we have is not working. I'm running on 3 main topics, and that's to help everybody. We need a prescription donation program in the state desperately, like in other states as Tennessee, as they are allowed to donate unused prescriptions, uncontrolled substances. $300 eye drops can be redonated. I'm also running on wanting to work with the county, wanting to work with SCODOT about the infrastructure. I want to implement a impact fee for these new developers out of state that come in and end up building without no idea where they're heading. That money from per house development would be earmarked to that area radius, helping with first responders and teachers and our roads. That would also help with the amount of influx on people. I get pushback all the time about why this will be passed on to the buyer, but I'd rather as a versus paying an annual fee and higher property taxes. So I hope you all join me in supporting me on June 11th in the Republican primary.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Chris Huff. It's good to have all of you here. I'm glad you came out. Thank you for putting this on and giving us an opportunity to share who we are and what we're about. I am going to differ on a couple of things. I got nothing against anything that's been said. To each his own, and everybody has their own philosophy and ideology about how to go about things. But I believe that we've had folks in Columbia trying to get along to make things happen for a long time, and what we've seen is a quagmire. What we've seen is the swamp has continued to get deeper, 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 and more liberal and more liberal and more liberal. For instance, right now, if you look at the way states vote, our legislatures vote in the United States, our state is the second most liberal voting legislature in the United States, yet we have a Republican super majority. That is a fact. Okay, that is a studied fact. And that is because we've had a Republican supermajority that has gone down there and said, oh, we need to get along. We need to get along. I'm going to steal you from thunder just a little bit. One of the questions was, are you going to join the Freedom Caucus? And I'm going to tell you, right now, I have every intention to vote with and be part of the Freedom Caucus. All right, that's right now, there's no question about it. I've got that. If you like that, great. If you don't, I'd love for you to look into that. The Republican caucus right now has a, they don't like to call it an oath. They have a loyalty oath that they want you to sign. And that loyalty oath would require you not to disclose certain information, as well as not to run against or campaign against or say anything against anybody out of their caucus, regardless of how good a job they're doing or not. That's what part of that oath is. That's what they want you to sign to when you get down there in order to be part of the Republican caucus. Folks, I don't plan to sign that. I'm not going to sign something that says that I'm just going to blindly follow and blindly agree. That's not part of who I am. That's never been part of who I am. I want to go down there with 2 words in my heart and 2 words in my mind, and that is accountability and responsibility. Accountability and responsibility. I believe these are 2 words that our culture has lost sight of for far too long. Nobody wants to be held accountable, and nobody wants to be held responsible for anything anymore. It's always somebody else's fault, right? That's why we're the most litigious society in history right now. More lawsuits than ever before, because everything is someone else's fault, and nobody wants to take responsibility. All right, I want us to have accountability and responsibility. That means accountability and responsibility when it comes to the budget process. We need to look at the budget. We need to study the budget. We need to look at how money was used last year. We need to look at whether it was effective and efficient. If it wasn't effective and efficient, then we need to look at where it needs to be improved. We need to look at possibly cutting things out of the budget that weren't effective and efficient. That doesn't get done. Right now, what happens is they take last year's budget and they look at what needs to be added to last year's budget, right? It's a poor thing for us as taxpayers. It's a poor disservice to us. I also want us to help lower taxes. And when I say lower taxes, I'm talking about a tax overhaul, the whole tax system. I'd love for us to look at the tax system. One of the things that drives me crazy, I don't know about you, is property taxes. I can't stand property taxes. Here's the problem with property taxes. As long as we have property taxes, you'll never own anything in your life. Amen? Amen. Because the minute you fall on hard times and the minute you can't pay your taxes, guess who's going to come and take it? It was never truly yours. We need to get rid of property taxes. Right? There are other ways for us to do things without your property being taken away from you. We need to stop corporate welfare. We do not need to be picking and choosing which businesses that make millions of dollars are going to succeed and which ones are not going to succeed on the backs of hardworking taxpayers. All right? This is crazy that we give all these incentives and then these companies move in here and then they make millions of dollars on our backs, and we're still paying more taxes because of it. They don't help with the logistics. They don't help with the infrastructure that's been talked about. That's the things that we need to work on. I've got some others that we'll talk about later. Thank you for being here. My name's Chris Huff, and I look forward to serving you in Columbia.
We've got this chair here. If someone needs this chair, that chair, and that chair, and one up front, and one there. Okay. So if we have more people come in. That's great, y'all. That's great. Did y'all learn something that you didn't know? Yeah. Okay, so we're going to get started with questions and allowing them to answer these questions and debate each other on these questions. I do want to say, when you ask a question, please be concise. I don't need to hear your life story before the question or any of that. Just ask the question, okay? Because we could be here all night listening to your life. All right.
Okay, is there time for rebuttal?
Yes, they're going to have 2 minutes to answer the questions. So. Can someone walk around and hand the mic? Okay, let's start with the floor. Does anybody want to stand and ask a question?
Emma spelling John's I'm Julie Hershey, and I'm in the Ware Place precinct. And Chris had mentioned that he will join the Freedom Caucus if elected. So my question to the other three, will you join the Freedom Caucus if you are elected? Why or why not? I'll be up in the
Well, first of all, as far as caucusing, my caucusing is with you, the voter. Because when I'm elected, it's that representative has to be the voice of the people. And the reason that I say that is because I don't think the citizens of this state are served when individuals go up there and when they don't like something, they push it back from the table, they take their ball and go home. Who loses in that situation are the taxpayers, the voters, and our citizens. And we have to work together to address the issues facing our state today. Because I will tell you, it's not going to change. Every time our businesses or our downtown is listed as the best place to live in America, this growth is going to continue, and if we don't take an active role, we are all going to lose.
So my answer to that question is maybe. And that's what I wrote on the paper. And the reason that I say maybe is this. To Carrie's point, if a candidate came to me and said, I'm joining this caucus, I want to be on this committee, and I'm going to do this, I would say, no, you're not. So I think first we have to hear from you guys. We have to hear from you as constituents as far as what you want from us, because we are your representatives. We shouldn't be telling you what we're going to do. You're telling us what we want to do, what you want us to do, because we work for you. That's the way it goes. Or at least that's the way it's supposed to go. It's not necessarily the way it goes today. But realistically, that's the way it should go. Now, to answer your question as far as would I vote with the Freedom Caucus today, I would tell you on every single subject today, I would vote exactly how the Freedom Caucus is voting. But I'm in this to hear from you guys of what you want, not to tell you what I'm going to do. I don't think that's fair to you as the people that I want to represent, because again, I would represent you. You're the people that are the bosses. That's your job to tell us.
To answer your question, I don't know. When I get down there, I want to see which caucus actually has the best representatives, as Carrie said. Who has our best interests at heart in Columbia? From what I've seen of the Freedom Caucus, they like to push policy on budget week, and that's the only time. They might put amendments during out the year, but they're never heard primarily because they're the Freedom Caucus. I was speaking earlier because of the bad relationships that they had. You can't make policy changes during budget week. Representative Page was asked this year, did any of his caucus members attend any kind of subcommittee or any kind of committee chairman to express their caucus's concerns? And his answer was no. So what kind of caucus wants to just have kind of a media agenda on budget week? How do you run an effective caucus like that? You have to have relationships with committee chairmen and go to them and express their concerns for your constituents, not some kind of showboat on the House floor. I'm a conservative, but we need a conservative leader that actually knows how to do the process of law and order in the State House. So when I get down there behind closed doors, I'll actually want to see where the cameras are gone and there's no one recording. I want to see who actually has the best interests as South Carolinians. Making policy changes on budget week is not how we change law in this state. Thank you.
Angie, could Chris have a reply as to why he would?
I feel like I got my 2 minutes too.
Sure, yeah.
I got my 2 minutes too. I've had the distinct privilege and honor of being able to meet quite a few of these Freedom Caucus that have been maybe even named while we've been up here. And I'll tell you, every one of them that I've met have had a deep, sincere care about the people in their district, as well as a deep, sincere relationship with their Lord, as well as a deep concern for their state. And when they caucus together so that they can support and encourage one another in the things that you all hold dear. They're not being given a voice right now because they're standing against the tyranny that's been down there in the swamp with the good old boy system for far too long. They won't let them bring an amendment, but they'll let the Democrats have just as many amendments to the bills as the Republican supermajority right now. Why? Because they don't like the conservative revival and the conservative resurgence that's happening in the name of the Freedom Caucus. The Republican caucus does not like the good things that are happening because of the strong stance and the fight that the Freedom Caucus is doing on your behalf. And I'll tell you this, I'll go down there and fight with Ashley Trantham or RJ May or Pace or Adam or any of these other folks that you're seeing that are part of that caucus any day of the week. And I'll do it because I know they're men of integrity, women of integrity, and they are absolutely listening to what you care about, and that's why they're fighting so hard for the things that they fight for. And that's what I plan to do as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're here for.
So Chris, I want to ask you this question though. The issue that I have is the Freedom Caucus doesn't have a voice right now. They've been boxed out by the so-called Republicans. Would you say that what really needs to happen to keep our conservative values truly alive, truly thriving, is you gotta pull some people along with you? You've gotta build, hold on, let me finish.
I was wondering if we have a time limit on how this is gonna go, because you're asking me to.
I got 2 minutes. So don't we have to build that caucus? Don't we have to increase that caucus to actually be able to get stuff done?
Yeah.
To actually be able to get, I mean, look, we just debated on the floor of the House this year, should children have access to pornography? What a waste of our taxpayer dollars. That should have never happened, number one. But shouldn't a caucus as strong as the Freedom Caucus be pulling people in that actually takes us from the bottom of the pile in our country as far as a conservative legislature and elevates us to what we all deserve here in South Carolina?
Question?
And I don't know, I'd like to respond.
But
This one I
You
will
wanna answer the
stand
question
for.
then? I'll answer yours. You want me to answer multiple at a time or one at a time? How you want
Well,
me
I
to-
just want to do a rebuttal to what was said. First of all, we're talking about a Freedom Caucus that one, voted against the budget that included a tax cut for all of you. They voted against teacher pay. They voted against pay increases for EMTs and police officers. Tell me how that voting record served any of us.
They voted against a budget that wasn't thoroughly analyzed, as I spoke of during my opening. A budget that wasn't scrutinized, analyzed, where accountability and responsibility was not at play. They voted against a budget that didn't go through a proper budgetary process that needs to be gone through every year, and I'm gonna get in the weeds a little bit here, but the greatest way to do a budget is you start at a zero base. All right, it's for some of you that know, you start at zero. You don't start at the top, you start at zero and you work your way up and you say, okay, what all happened and what all was good? All right, but let me answer his question. Yes, I believe you absolutely bring people along. I believe you absolutely build it up. And I believe that's why right now there were 17 people that voted most of the year with the Freedom Caucus. Is that correct? Can we all agree with that? And right now we're looking at 35 people right now who have committed across the state, if elected, to agree and caucus with the Freedom Caucus. 35. That's a pretty big change, and that's a lot of people coming along.
Mr. Huff makes a good point. I don't hate the Freedom Caucus. I actually admire Representative May. I wish he had came today, because he proposed a bill 3 years ago that would create an evaluation act on our corporate welfare, you say, and we'll talk more about that later because there's interesting data there. When we invest into businesses that come to this state, we need to know that our investment is actually getting our return. Representative May 3 years ago proposed legislation that would actually create an evaluation committee to make sure we're getting our money's worth. But that has since been put on the shelf, moved another day because of the relationship they have. And you say accountability, it's not accountable when you call other members of the House, other Republicans, socialists, you call them all kind of name in the book, anti-American. How are you going to bring people to the conservative side that way, name calling other Republicans? Thank you.
All right, who's next with the, we'll move on to another question?
Yes, I'm gonna take a question from a card now.
Okay.
Anonymous question. This question is, and it can be for anybody that wants to answer or all of them, please address the $1.8 billion mystery money in Colombia. Have y'all heard about that? Who wants their money back?
Start with that one?
I'll stand for this one too. First of all, running a financial institution of several $100 million, I can tell you we know exactly where every dollar comes from and where every dollar goes or is supposed to go. And I think the prudent thing to do is to do that, to do a forensic audit and make sure we know where that money came from and where it is supposed to go. But if it is not designated somewhere, it should go back to the people that it came from, the taxpayers. And that is one of the things I've examined credit unions, I have ran boards. I can tell you that not knowing where your money's coming from and where it's supposed to go is a problem, and we do need to address that in our state.
I don't know about any of you, but I would sure love to find $1.8 billion in my bank account. I think even more concerning though is not only just the $1.8 billion, but that money also made $250 million. That $250 million has somehow been spent. So you spent $250 million from $1.8 billion in. You didn't even know you had, yet you spent it. Okay, so our roads haven't been taken care of with all the tax money we've been paying since I believe like 2017. But we've got $1.8 billion sitting there. This money is our money, and it should be dispersed right back to every single taxpayer that it's owed to.
Where did it come from, I guess, is everybody's asking. Who discovered it? We've actually already paid that money, which, if I can't do the math off the top of my head, it's probably less than $105 to $109 per taxpayer. We have an issue with police at county level around here. Southern Greenville County, for example, only has 2 sheriff's deputies down here in the lower part of the state. Local county law enforcement competes with state law enforcement because 2 years ago, or last year, our state assembly voted to increase the pay for state troopers. So not only is the county competing against state, they're competing against towns and municipalities. I would like to put those funds to paying for more sheriff's deputies around here. We've already paid the taxes, why not just have more security, especially in Southern Greenville County around the Princeton area? Well, criminals can hopscotch multiple counties. Thank you.
I don't think this is a real hard one for anybody in the room to be appalled. I think we all are really upset that there's money like that that's sitting down there, and folks that we've elected and asked to be the caretakers of such are not taken care of. And so I come back to the same 2 words. I think accountability and responsibility are missing. And I believe those same 2 words are the answer. And I believe those are the words that you guys should be requiring. And when we go there, we should be requiring of the folks that are there. There should be accountability and responsibility in the budgeting process. When you start at 0 and you work your way up, you find these things. And you can figure out where they came from. When you don't start at 0, then all of a sudden, there's this little thing that was sitting out there in a fund somewhere and nobody knows where it came from because we didn't add it all up. All right, that's my answer.
Hi, my name's Chris. My question concerns abortion. Since the Dobbs decision, states like South Carolina have revamped their laws on abortion. And since then, we've heard some horrible stories. The lady in Texas with a non-viable pregnancy who had to flee her state to get an abortion. And other stories about women in crisis situations with their pregnancy, going to ERs and being told simply because we don't understand our state's laws, could you please just leave, go bleed some more in the parking lot, or go home and come back when you're closer to death. A lot of states got a chance to decide for themselves, the voters did, with a referendum. Can we have that here? Would you be in favor of the people of the state voting for a referendum that could change our current law, which is a 6-week ban?
Well, on this issue, first of all, you know, I believe that every person is created by God, and we are here for a reason. But we also have to keep in mind that people are suffering, and we need to provide the services to make sure more people don't die. And as regards to a public referendum, I believe that we should have that remedy for the people of this state, because there are a lot of issues that need to be addressed that can't get anywhere in the State House, even when 77% of the people agree with it. So I fully support that.
So I think your question, Chris, was multifaceted. First off, abortion, it should be illegal. Every life has got value God's created. Now, if we're in a medical crisis, the issue that we have, and it's a second issue with your question, is doctors should have the ability to make decisions, medical decisions, and we should be able to make those decisions with our doctors as far as what kind of medical care that we need. We shouldn't have insurance companies standing in the way. We shouldn't have bureaucrats standing in our way. We shouldn't have a health czar standing in our way to make those decisions. But abortion, I guess your third part to your question was, should it be the people's choice? I think South Carolina has kind of spoken already, but if we want to put it to a vote, I think it's people's voices absolutely should be heard every single time.
So if I may ask, you're asking for a constitutional amendment, correct? That every woman has the right to choose her choice between abortion. So look what Ohio did, for example, last year. They went to the polls, overwhelmingly rejected the Republican-led House to increase the 75% threshold to pass such legislation. So now it's on the ballot this year. I'm pro-life. I always have been. I went to a Christian school my whole life. I respect life. But I also respect everyone's right to choose their medical condition for their bodies. I am totally against any kind of public funds going to abortion, because I can't ask my pastor, I can't ask someone in religious beliefs to go against their fundamental right to pay for an abortion to kill life. 6 weeks ban, I'm satisfied with that right now. For medical, I've got 3 kids and we knew we were pregnant before 6 weeks. But as a constitutional amendment, I would support that for the people to decide how they want their state to move forward in that category.
The issue that you brought up is a very, very minute amount of the issues that we deal with when it comes to abortion. So I'm going to say I agree with him very much, largely with Troy on his answer to you. Absolutely, though, in health situations, there are exceptions to be made in order to save life. The problem that people on the left or people who champion the cause of abortion, the problem is they've been trying to reshape this argument from where the argument should be. The argument is about life, all life. And for me, life begins at conception. And so that baby has rights just like that mother has rights. And we should be protecting the rights of all. All right? And so that's where my issue comes in. If there's a health crisis and we need to terminate in order to save the life, then that's a medical emergency. That's not an abortion at that point. That's a medical emergency. That's a different situation. And in those situations, I don't think there's anybody that would say, no, you gotta let that woman die. But when it comes to just straight abortion, no, the babies need to be protected.
So if abortion, I mean, if life begins at conception, are you for or against IVF treatment, fertility treatment?
I have no problem with fertility treatment.
But life begins at conception, you said.
Spontaneous abortions,
Then
that's what they call it.
then you're gonna be killing somebody. You're gonna be killing somebody if you support IVF therapy.
What happens to the embryos? Next question.
Egg meat.
Hey, yeah.
Okay.
So what
We're moving
happens?
on.
What
Moving
happens?
on.
Move it on.
We need to.
Angie, next question. That wasn't a good question. What happens to the embryos if they don't use that are?
You don't get two questions. It's one question. Next question.
Question wasn't good.
Thank you. Okay. Anonymous question. Excuse me? You asked a question. Your question. We're moving on to the next question. Somebody else can ask what you want to know if they want to know it. You're welcome. Okay, so this is a loaded question, so you're gonna really have to pack it in, okay?
2 minutes.
What is your opinion of South Carolina's COVID response?
So it was funny today, we were looking at the date in 2020, April 4th, 2020 was the day that we were supposed to open up our farm to the public. We have a ropes course, there's shared equipment, all this kind of stuff, and guess what? We were shut down. We kind of stammered a little bit, and before we said, you know what, forget this, we're opening up our business, and if somebody wants to come after us, come after us. Here's the deal. Government should never be shutting down any business, any church.
That's right.
Cutting out any type of commerce, telling people that you can't go somewhere. I remember Jody and I were standing in Lowe's when they set off the emergency, the emergency tones on everybody's phones. And I remember standing there in Lowe's and everybody's standing there chuckling because everybody's phones are just going beep. Here's the reality. We're all grown adults. We all can make decisions. And in October 2020, we had a fall festival at our farm. We had people that we lost staff members over it because they didn't like it. But guess what? We're outside, we make decisions. I did a hayride. People were like, you can't do a hayride. Social distancing. I looked back at one point, I had 35 people on our hay trailer, shoulder to shoulder. Guess what, folks? We're grown adults, we can make our decisions. Our response was terrible.
Well, COVID, for us, was working in the financial industry. I don't know if you realize, but money is very dirty. So we took the precautions, but what I believe is most everybody cared about other people, and if they were sick, they made sure to stay away or isolate themselves. I got it. I was diagnosed on March 13th of 2020, and it took 15 days to get my test. But I believe that everyone has the right, if you want to get the vaccine, fine, go get the vaccine. If you want to keep your business open, keep your business open. But it's the decision of the individuals. And I don't think it's the role of the government to shut down business and schools and those kind of things.
Well, I think everybody, including myself, is in that agreement with Ms. Carey and Troy here. Government has no place in shutting down businesses and schools in any kind of pandemic. That should be the school districts, that should be churches, that should be individual municipalities' decisions and the people. I fully support everybody's right to choose between vaccinations, choose whether to wear a mask or not, which was awful at work, especially at an uncontrolled climate environment I work at. But I also want to understand, people want to say that they're against corporate welfare, but you need to do your investigation on that, about the people that say that and whether or not they took that. Let's all remember, the COVID response was really mismanaged from the get-go. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, I can go back to my word, accountability and responsibility. And one of the places that it drove me crazy was when we had people telling us that they couldn't go to work because they were making more money staying at home than going to work off of the benefits that the government gave, right? I mean, that drove us all crazy. Some still do it. I mean, this stuff is just crazy. That's where the workforce got messed up, and there's just so much that we're all struggling from that. But one of the things that I saw there also is it was another time when government got involved and government tried to choose which businesses were going to succeed and which ones weren't, because they were deciding which businesses could open and which ones couldn't. And that's just not right. In any way, shape, form, or fashion in our society, that's wrong. And we should never allow that again. We should stand against that every chance we get. I applaud Troy for doing what he did and having the hayride. The hypocrisy was abysmal. We all remember politicians who got caught getting their hair cut when somebody else couldn't. Nobody else could. Nobody could get haircuts, but then somebody got. I mean, that stuff is crazy, right? It was a poor time. It was a terrible time in our country. And what we saw was rampant hypocrisy. Government should never be allowed to tell us as citizens what we can and cannot do in a free capitalistic society. If you choose not to go out in public, that's your choice, okay? If you feel sick, I was a pastor at the time. I had a couple of folks die of COVID in the hospital ward. I put a mask on, I went in the ICU room, and I prayed with those individuals before they passed away. I never got COVID. I'm not telling you I had some super gene. It just didn't happen.
Can I make one little rebuttal?
So Daniel, just to what you said, I'm going to vehemently disagree with you. I don't think our school systems should be shutting down. They're a government. Right now, at least, they're a government department. I do agree that businesses should have the right to do what they want to do. But municipalities, school systems, absolutely not. We're not killing our commerce over a made-up pandemic. Look, we all got sick. I would say probably most of us in this room got COVID. There were some folks that passed from it for whatever reasons. It was not a great illness to have. I've had it, I think, 3 or 4 times. But the reality is, nobody from government should be shutting us down.
And one thing about the government and schools being closed, and I want to just rebut the fact that people didn't want to go back to work. The reality is their kids, they had to e-learn. The parents were having to take care of their children, and if they didn't have anyone to help them, even if where they worked was told that they were essential, what do parents do if they had no place for their children? So I think that, there wasn't a lot of consideration made in that respect for our families as the COVID, all of those mandates went down.
Let me just add one thing as well as you said that. It reminded me, I've got family members who are in education, and we've still got kids today who are struggling as a result of the education that they lost during that time. The fact that they were out of the school system for the better part of, 3 years? I mean, we could really say 2. It really messed up their formation, and they're still struggling, not only education speaking, but socially speaking. It has affected their ability. man, those kids needed that. And so I agree, Troy, that was a major detriment to our society, and we're still suffering from that today.
We have a question in the back, then I'll read one and then I'll give you.
Tort reform. This state is in desperate need of tort reform. People get arrested. They make bail, they go out, they get arrested again, sometimes 3, 4, 5, 8 times. And the bail never goes up. How do you feel, what's your position on tort reform? There are several other issues, but that's the big one.
Okay. I think tort reform across the board, not just with recidivism in jails. We're also dealing with tort reform around insurance. I don't know about everyone in this room, but I haven't had an auto claim in over 12 years. And my insurance went up 20% just because of where I live. And a lot of that's being driven by the accidents and all the lawsuits and things like that. I think what we need to do, we're looking at the small venue, music venue. Same thing. We passed a law in 2017 that said you had to have $1 million of coverage. What's happened? We have only 3 insurers left in the state, and businesses are dying. So we need to work in that respect in a lot of areas.
Tort reform is going to start with judicial reform. That's what it's really going to boil down to. Right now, all of our judges are picked for us by a group of legislators, most of them lawyer legislators. And if they don't get their way, guess what? Those judges might not be up for term. So I lived out in Missouri for about 15 years. In Missouri, the people got to vote and choose their judges. How about that? We need to be able to vote and choose our judges. Now, do I think that we need to have a committee that says, hey, these guys are qualified? Absolutely. Should we limit it to 3? Absolutely not. Everybody that's qualified should be put up, and the citizens should have the right to vote for them. Once we do that, then we can, Mr. Bowden, then I think tort reform is going to come on its own, because the judges are going to want to make an impact. Right now, to steal Chris's word, nobody has accountability. You look at, we have a farm in Lawrence County, we live in Greenville County, and you watch these sheriffs say, we've got this criminal, he did this, this, and this, and we got him locked up. They'll be out tomorrow. There's no accountability in our system. There's no punishment. Ladies and gentlemen, I got spanked as a child. I got a switch across my behind as a child. I got paddled as a child. We need to get that back in our world again.
Yeah.
I agree.
He brought up a very interesting issue about the drinking and driving, I guess, for tort reform and getting in jail, getting back out, getting it in. While judicial reform is needed, I also feel like that bail reform also needs to be looked at. Having low bail for minor misdemeanor offenses allows criminals and allows lawbreakers to get out faster. But bail reform will go hand in hand with tort reform. And the issue that Kerry brought up about 2017 about requiring events and venues to have the $1 million liability issue is because, like Troy said, there's a lot of attorneys out there in the state. There's a lot of attorneys that want money when they see it. And these insurance companies are claiming that every $3 they get, every $1 they get for a premium, they're dispersing $3 out for a victim or liability. So definitely that has to be looked at. Judicial reform has to be looked at. I feel like we are one of the only 2 states in the country that does not elect judges. South Carolina and Virginia, the 2 most powerful chambers in our state house across the country. And we really need to give more power back to the people to vote for these judicial judges. Because I feel like you see a lot more changes if you do that, if you elect judges.
So I believe there's always room for reform, especially when we come to the judicial processes. I think that we see a lot of progression and changes just in society like that. I believe our society today is not the same. Behaviors today, the repetitiveness of what happens and how people act, and we've talked about it, again, the same two words. People just don't have the same sense of responsibility, and they don't see life the same way as we did 20 or 30 years ago. And so when it comes to these issues of reform, when we're talking about, whether we're talking about tort or bail or judicial reform, I think they all come back to, okay, what is the best circumstances that we can put in our judicial system to help correct behavior, to help facilitate the judicial system in the purpose that it is, the purpose that it has for us as citizens. And the reality is we want to be safe. We want to have a safer place. We all want to live in a safer place. And we all want the judicial system to aid us in that. All right? And so whether we're talking about, the tort situation, I think really clogs up the courts sometimes. And so whether we're talking about making room through tort reform, or whether we're talking about bail being more or less, I know cash bail is a big talking point for some people. There's all kinds of things that we can talk about. I think there's room for reform. All right, there's always room for reform. Do I have an answer? No, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a judge. I've not been in that arena, but I definitely would love to have a good analysis of how to reform.
I didn't hear time.
Are you better?
Thought I heard right.
Okay, I have an anonymous question here. And this is actually written for Chris. How do you explain yourself about your address change from District 25 to District 28? You moved out of district today, and why are you trying to eliminate Alan Kellett because your injunction prevents Alan from showing up tonight?
So I'm not sure what they're talking about me moving today. I've been living at 8511 Augusta Road for 2 months now. So I live in the brick house there beside Huss Power Equipment. That's where I've been for weeks and weeks. I've been there since I retired. Or I guess the first weekend in March probably was when I moved there. So I've been there for plenty of time. My injunction with Mr. Kellett is he does not live in District 28. And so quite simply, my concern is if you're going to put an address down that is not your address in order to run, then what are you going to do when you get to Columbia? And so yes, I did file a protest. That's a public protest. I have no problem with that protest. I take credit for that protest. I protested his eligibility. He does not live in District 28. He lives in District 25. And so I have a problem with that.
I'm going to follow up that and say, is the address that you put on the application when you filed the address that you told us you live at tonight?
8511.
Okay, just clarifying.
It's the address on my driveway.
No, you don't need that.
Not yet, I'm sorry. So, this is news to me. I did not hear of any injunction or any protest for Kellett. I have heard rumors. I have a lot of people reach out to me, because many of you I've already met. I started months ago talking to you all, and of course I've heard things about Mr. Huff here as well. And I scratched my head on it too, because he lives, or he did live 2 months ago, as you say, in Wendell Jones's district across from the church in the parsonage. And 2 months ago, he made a decision to move to 28 to run. We have a Democratic elected representative in Wendell Jones in the district that he resided in. I don't know how many years he was pastor. Why didn't he challenge a Democrat setting in that district, Wendell Jones? We need to get him out. But he decided to take the easy way to move down 2 months ago for Ashley's seat, you know?
1 minute.
I didn't decide to take the easy way. I moved because I retired from the church. I announced my retirement on the second week of January to the chairman of deacons, chairman of personnel, and chairman of finance as a result of a change in our life. As a result of which we were moving to the brick house where my grandfather who died in May had left to me. The brick house at 8511 Augusta Road, the house that I've owned since 2011. You can go back and look at the tax records. I've been paying for it since then. That's the house I was always going to retire. And so when I retired, that's where we were going. I've always been in that district. There's no easy way. There had nothing to do with it. On January 30th, Miss Trantham was on the phone with me and told me that I needed to run, and if I would do so, she would endorse me. That's the day that things started rolling and this got started. I had absolutely no inclination that I was going to run until January the 30th.
Say something about this, about what you just said, because I know what happened. Chris. I was there at, when Chris lives. Are we on? You're on, you're live. I was there when Chris lives. Ashley was also there. Ashley said she called him. He didn't want to. It wasn't that Chris jumped into it. I'm sorry. He didn't jump into it. He was very apprehensive, weren't you, Chris? He held back. It took him a few days to think about it. Ashley was actually inspired. She felt like, okay. And so,
We're doing a debate.
thank you.
And I just want to share that I've lived in the district for 25 years, have never moved and lived in the same house in the same neighborhood. So there's no moving around for me.
Okay, I'm Rory, and we've heard a lot from all of these fine folks tonight, and thank you very much for coming out and giving us a chance to hear you all. But what I really want to know is how many of you have actual state legislative experience?
While I haven't held a public office, I have been working in the State House since 2019 and have worked with a coalition across the state made up of nonprofits and churches and individuals. Had the luxury to work with legislators to get 2 House bills filed. We've worked in the Senate on 2 different bills, and we're able to get it moved to the floor. And the reason, the issue that I worked on, if it was a referendum issue, it would be solved today. But because of big lobby PACs and very, very wealthy industries, that legislation hasn't happened, and they're preying on our citizens. So yes, I've been at the State House. I've worked with legislators, and I understand the process.
Rory, I don't have any direct state legislator experience. I was a Cape Fire Commissioner. I've worked on county planning boards. I work, I'm a volunteer board member for the South Carolina Agritourism Statewide Board. So behind the scenes doing a lot of stuff with state legislators, but to answer your question, direct experience, I don't.
So I have 0. I'm 35 years old. I actually now qualify to run for president. So that's down the road right now. But Zero, to answer your question, I have zero state, I mean, I'm trying to get there, and the only way you can get there is to be elected. And I want to represent District 28 the best way I can. And I have heard Ms. Carey, she has had active involvement with her pushing, what is it, the predatorial, yeah. So she has had active lobbying that bill inside the State House. I think she's got a supporter here as well. And as I was saying, I want to be your representative, primarily because I'm not a farmer. I've not been on the fire department. I haven't pushed legislation, but I know how what we need. Thank you.
I don't have state legislative experience. I have real-world administrative experience since I started in business. I ran a family business first. Then when I was getting my master's degree up in Raleigh, I worked nights at UPS when we were starting our family, having 2 kids. I was a supervisor for UPS on the midnight shift, did administration there. And then ever since I went into church ministry, I've been an administrator. Even when I was associate pastor in Charlotte for 3 years, I was the administrator of the church because of my business administration background. And so I don't have any state legislative experience, to give you a simple answer, but I have administrative experience and budget experience in many different in many different areas in my life.
Okay. Anonymous question. Anonymous question. And this is another packed question too. What do you know about bills H 4927 and S 975 regarding medical freedom and a South Carolina health czar? Do you agree or do you oppose? 2 minutes.
Who wants to start? I don't mind starting. This one, I got the question about the medical czar. I went and read the bill, and I've also read a lot of what's been said about this. But I want to share an anecdote with you, because when I read the bill and read the rhetoric that's out there, I went to a family that has a child that actually falls and gets care from 2 different agencies. They needed help, and because of the bureaucracy and the separation of these departments, that child's care was delayed 6 to 8 months. And that family had to fight that bureaucracy. And I believe that that is inefficient and it doesn't serve our population well. And by doing and allowing those agencies to directly be responsible to the governor of our state is a great way to make those agencies work together for you and our citizens.
You know, Carrie, that's why I want to run for representative, because there's too many state agencies, and there's too many state agencies that don't talk to one another. And I want to make sure that every single person that I represent has my phone number, and I'm accessible, and I'll work to put those pieces together. But as far as the question, both these bills are terrible, to be quite honest. 4927, astonishing to me that 17 Republicans voted against it. Astonishing. Only 17 out of all of our House members. You know why? Because they didn't read it. They didn't read it. Nobody learned from Obamacare, did they? The problem is that too many times our legislators follow the narrative rather than actually do the homework. In my big boy job, as I call it, I do a lot of engineering, looking at papers, looking at diagrams, actually having to dig into it and say, is this going to work? S975, it's a good step. It's a good step, but it's not perfect by any means. And if I was chosen by you folks to represent you, I would work with the Senate, and I would work with the House to do amendments to even 975 that further protects us. Because 975 is a good start, but it doesn't get there. We have to get there. We can't settle for good enough.
So to answer your questions, I'm more of a physical responsibility guy. Rather pay 6 committee chairs to hold DSS and to hold mental health. I'd rather pay one chairman over all of DHEC. And I know they're separating the environmental from the health coming up. I'm also I believe wholeheartedly that there should be only one executive committee member, and that's the governor of the state. He should be the only one in any kind of emergency situations that should call up the guard. I don't know anywhere in the world that has 2 people that can do that. I also believe that needs to be repealed. I don't feel like a czar, as people call it, really be the next health secretary, should have that amount of power over the governor. The governor is our sole representative for executive committee branch, and he should be the one that commandeers sheriffs. He should be the one that does anything like that, regardless to any kind of national or state emergency. Hurricanes, floods. But I am for saving money for the taxpayers by having one secretary for 6 different departments, as Carrie suggests. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that was well stated. The governor already had many of the authorities that were claimed that we needed when they put these bills together. The governor had those abilities, and so I think we messed up. The bills messed up when they took power or took that authority away from him and gave it to another level of bureaucracy there in this position because of this bill. But we did not need that. I believe that the governor is held accountable by the people, and therefore the governor is the one who should be going on, should be held to the line when it comes to executing that type of response, level of response. That's the level of person in government that we need to be making those kinds of decisions. We don't need an appointed bureaucrat that's been put in position to do that as well. As far as streamlining, we all know, I think we've talked about the budget. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be streamlined, man. We need to streamline a lot of things. We need to get more efficient in a lot of areas, and that'll save us a lot of budget money, and that'll help us avoid a lot of waste. Streamlining is fine, but when streamlining starts to take authority away from the people that have been put in place to have those authorities, now we got a problem.
Look, I don't know about you guys, but I've never seen government become more efficient. You know, that's stealing the words from our great representative down in Newberry. But that's the reality, is we're not going to make things more efficient. What we need to do is scrap our system. We need to go back and start all over again. You know, this can't happen overnight. It's going to take some time, but that's going to happen. Now, our governor having the authority, I don't know how many of you guys know this, but our governor put out a letter to all the legislators saying this is a bad thing that you guys are pushing against this. A bad thing that you're pushing against this, where you're going to hurt people when it comes time for natural disasters and whatnot, because it's going to go against what needs to be done. And it stood right there with our director of the Department of Health, and who line itemed everything down that was going to hurt it. And I was absolutely disappointed in our governor's response.
Okay, this may be our last question. We'll see about how this goes. Yeah.
I'm Larry Miner. I live in Garrison. This is related to the $1.8 billion question we had much earlier in the evening. Not exactly a follow-up, but the reason we have this $1.8 billion fund that nobody knows where it came from is because of incompetence by the Comptroller General. And the previous Comptroller General was forced to resign for his incompetence because he lost track of $3.5 billion last year. I don't know if you remember that. Yes. Comptroller General is an auditor and an accountant, and it's a constitutional office. So we vote for the person. I'm not an accountant, I'm not an auditor. I don't consider myself competent to cast an intelligent vote for a Comptroller General. I doubt that anybody in this room except maybe Carrie is competent to do that. Would you support a constitutional amendment to eliminate the Comptroller General as a constitutional office and have him appointed by the governor?
I don't know about you guys, but I've never seen government become more efficient. You know, that's stealing the words from our great representative down in Newberry. But that's the reality, is we're not going to make things more efficient. What we need to do is scrap our system. We need to go back and start all over again. You know, this can't happen overnight. It's going to take some time, but that's the reality.
Well, I would love to explore that, and, because I really do believe you need somebody with experience, and I think what's happened in the last couple of years has proven that we need individuals that know how to manage money and to manage finances in that role. So that is something I would definitely be interested in researching and learning more about that approach.
As my wife would tell you, I'm probably the worst accountant in the house. But I do know about making budgets. And, you know, as far as understanding at that level, when you have those many dollars, I'm kind of with you. I don't know that I would know who the right person is to vote on. But I think what's more important is when you find out who the comptrollers are that are run for office, why is there not much to do about them? Shouldn't that be some of the biggest to do? These guys are in charge of our money. So I think I would advocate more. I would tell you that I don't know the answer if I would be happy with taking it out of the people's choice, because I really believe that people are having too many things taken away from them today, and I think we should be able to vote on it. But what I would say is that I would advocate heavily for a lot more detailed information to come out with those folks that are running for that office so that we can be more informed.
Oh, absolutely, I agree. I feel like the governor should appoint somebody, and that person goes in front of the General Assembly to be voted on, and the General Assembly looks at their qualifications. And I believe that primarily because, like these two said, government efficiency. I mean, I'm not sure on how the other states pick their controller general, but I feel like that the governor should appoint somebody, and the judicial system and the representatives should look into that. And as a matter of fact, last week on the General Assembly, they're in the spring break this week, they actually passed legislation to let the auditor be appointed by the judge, because the auditor was actually hired by Curtis Loftus and hired by the Controller General. So either or is a conflict of issues there. So absolutely, I want more efficient government.
Larry, I think that was a great idea. I had not thought of that one on my own, but I believe it would be great for the governor to be the one. This could be, I guess, like a cabinet position or whatnot for the governor, so to speak. And then his administration is responsible for like this when they happen, because what we've seen in the last 24 to 48 hours is a witch hunt, right? They're trying to find somebody to bury with this thing, and the reality is we all know who the guy is, but the guy's not there to bury it, so now they're trying to find somebody else who I think we all would consider to be a pretty good guy. And if you dig in, it's really not his responsibility. He's not the guy that did it. And so, yeah, I think it would be a great thing for the governor, for the executive of the administration to appoint his guy, and then he's responsible for making sure that his guy does the job the correct way, and they're responsible and hold him accountable. I think that'd be great.
Okay, I want to give you the answers to the pop quiz. Okay, the first question is, have you met with the county GOP? Look through. Yes, he has. Troy says yes, he has. Carrie says no, she has not. And Chris said yes. Number 2, do you support Convention of States? Carrie says yes. Chris says yes. Troy says yes. Daniel says yes. Number 3, do you intend to join the Freedom Caucus? Daniel didn't answer, but he already explained that. Let's see, Troy said maybe, and he discussed that. Carrie said no, and Chris said yes. Number 4, do you intend to sign the South Carolina Republican Party loyalty oath? No. Carrie said yes. Troy said yes. Daniel didn't answer. Number 5, is your permanent address where you reside in District 28? And I think everybody answered yes. They should have. Number 6, have you attended? Let's see. Daniel said no. Troy yes. Carrie says yes. And Chris said yes. Number 7, have you ever held a position in office before? Chris said no. Carrie said no. Troy said yes. Daniel said no. And then the last one is, do you have a criminal history? Because it's important, right? And of course everybody said no, right? Anyway, it's just a few questions we were interested in finding out. I want to take a minute and give them about a 30-second closing argument. And, just let them give you a little spill and wrap it up, and then I'll conclude. Okay?
Well, thank you so much for coming, and I think all of you will agree we're all very different, and we all, I believe, care about our state. We all just have a little different way that we would go about working to get things done. And for me, it's about families, it's about communities and our small businesses, and how do we help our people of South Carolina thrive and be the best and have the best that they can. And I hope I can win your vote to represent in District 28.
Well, I'd like to start, can you hold the time? Just kidding. I'd like to start and really thank you guys for everything that you've put together, how structured you guys have kept this throughout the whole meeting, so really hats off to you guys. Look, it's time for a change. It's absolutely time for a change. A change that brings a common sense approach back to our government. We've witnessed some ludicrousy from some of our current representatives. Not our representative currently, but some of our other representatives in our state. Let me say this, I'm not here to play political games, pander to special interests, that kind of thing. I'm here to represent you, to be a man of my word, and I want you to vote for Troy Prosser June 11th. Thank you.
So the National Security Administration is actually the only office that actually listens to y'all right now. So, or NSA. So I want my office and my term to actually be the second office. I want to be y'all's mouthpiece in Columbia. I want to reflect the majority of my district, and I want our policies passed in Columbia. And I do ask for y'all to support. This was fun. I hope we can do this again. I hope I get your support on June 11th in the Republican primary. Thank you.
I also appreciate everybody coming out, showing your excitement and your encouragement, your support for the process. I know I was hit with a little bit of a question there. I did file a protest yesterday. There's no hiding from that. But, the integrity of the election process is a huge thing. And I believe we've seen over the last 4 years or more, the integrity of elections has been questioned enough. And so I want you guys to know that you can trust the integrity of the process, and then you get to choose, based on what you learn about us, who it is that you want to go and represent you and fight for the values that you hold dear. I want to go fight for those values. I'd appreciate your vote. Thank you.
I have a little curveball, just bear with me for 1 second, because I think this is important. We have two guys from our city council here tonight, and they really need our support if you're in the city, even if you're not, because things that are happening in the city limits where they're annexing county property and bringing it into the city, it's creeping out county. I mean, I'm getting locked in my neighborhood right now. So if Chad O'Rear and Tim Pinkerton, is he still here? I want to give them a moment to just tell you something that's going on and what they're doing. So you guys can take a couple of minutes and then we'll close, okay?
Thanks, I'm Tim Pinkerton, and I'm City Council member representing Ward 5. Simpsonville. All right. If you live in Simpsonville, like noticed or said, or even around it, whatever the council and the city planning department does affects you. Coming up on April 11th is the next planning meeting. There'll be at least 5 new changes or requests for changes for zoning for developers, whether it be a school, housing, or whatever. It's all going to affect our infrastructure, right? Bigger issue comes at the end, and this is something that Chad and I have been working on. Chad has put an ordinance together that's requesting a change in how the planning department works. We found out early on in one of our orientations that it takes 5 members of the 7-member council to overturn the planning department. This kind of went over my head for a little bit at the beginning, but we went down to to Columbia to a meeting, training. We had a speaker from the Appalachian Council of Governments talk about planning, and one of the things came up that we had to rush up and ask him a question about how Simpsonville operates. He actually took some information I sent to him, he wrote back to me, he called me up, and said that it's a little bit problematic, and here's the reason why. And it happened actually at the end of last year. There was a 4-3 vote to approve a new zoning ordinance. It didn't really matter because it takes 5. If there's a 5-member quorum and it's legal and there's a planning department issue comes up and you have 4 no votes and 1 yes vote, it passes. So Chad wrote an ordinance to change this to a simple majority. We don't really know where we stand with the rest of our votes, but the interesting thing is it actually has to go to the planning department to change it because it's a zoning issue. So they're gonna read it. I would be very surprised if they don't pass or they disagree with it and send it back to the city, and then we'll have to take issue there. I'll let you speak on that.
Yeah. Again, thanks everyone here. There's a lot of familiar faces. Y'all are a big part of the reason why I'm standing here right now. Tim won his election very handily, me not so. But nonetheless, I'm here much to the chagrin of some people in the city. My ordinance simply gets back to putting power back into the hands of the voters. If you read the ordinance, one of my main points is the way things sit right now, it's a disenfranchisement of the voters, of the taxpayers, because it requires 5 people, not a supermajority. 5 people represent 71% of the vote. Well, 71% in a national or a state election would be almost unheard of. 55-45 is considered a landslide, but yet the elected representatives are being held to a 71% standard against a committee that is appointed by the same people, the elected officials that y'all elected. So that imbalance of power, really I found out yesterday that in about a 6-year span, the planning committee in Simpsonville has literally denied 4 requests in 6 years. 4. The way our ordinance reads right now, for us to even overturn an acceptance of a proposal, we have to have 5 votes. There is not anyone in this state that has that standard. Only Simpsonville. That has been every municipality in this county, the city of Greenville, they all work to overturn the approval of a planning commission is simple majority. Only Simpsonville functions on a 5 vote for both an approval and a denial. My ordinance reads flat out, It should be simple majority for either side of that equation. Problem is that there's only one side of the equation is being exercised by our planning committee, and that's the rubber stamp. Let them do it, let them do it, let them do it. This will put the power back in the hands of the people who vote, not into the hands of an appointed committee, and holding the taxpayers to a higher standard in order to transact the business of the city. So what I would like, if I could impose on you, is next Thursday night, the 11th, the planning committee meets. It'll be the last thing on the agenda. I'd love for all of you to show up. I'd love for all of you to flood the room, and the people that live in the city limits are allowed to speak. I would like everyone to sign up, even if you're not a public speaker, just to say, we want you to accept this ordinance, because literally we are asking them to cut their own power. But that's how it should be. Y'all elected us, you didn't elect the planning committee. So that's where we're trying to return this to. If they vote to accept the ordinance as written, then it's over. If not, it will go on to the committee of the whole meeting next month, and we will discuss it in public at that point. But we hope they will do the right thing and accept the ordinance the way it's written, because we want y'all to be in power here, not a committee that's appointed. So, thanks, and I hope you can come next Thursday.
Question, just to clarify, where's the meeting, what time
Meeting
is it?
City Hall. The meeting, I think, is still 6:30 for the planning committee. But to be safe, get there a little early, you can sign up. You don't have to use your 3-minute allotment, you can use 10 seconds and just say, I want to accept this new ordinance of the, to rewrite the 3 zoning ordinances that are in place. For being here, Tim and I sat in these seats before and it didn't work.
So that we can learn more about the values and their interests and how they will support our community with those. And hopefully we'll have another opportunity to talk to them, because I still have so many questions. There's never enough time, you know, but I'm sure that they're open to you calling them and asking them questions, because there's still so many good questions, like closing primaries and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, I want to thank you guys for coming. I want to thank you guys for coming and making this a very successful debate tonight. I appreciate it. And now, if you don't mind, and if you're able to help us collect the chairs, there's chairs that need to go on each side of the wall, and then there's some carts in the back that we can collect the chairs.